This is the reaction portion. This is probably going to be on YouTube. So if you are on YouTube, please drop a like, follow for more of these. And if you want to see the entire episode, please go to my Patreon. If you're a $5 tier member, then that means that you can watch this as well as also a bunch of other, videos that I've put out. I think this is episode 4, if I'm not mistaken. And you also get, Chicken Fight, for free. Well, I guess not for free. You're a $5 tier, so you're buying it with it. But if you're a $15 tier, then you can not only watch these videos a lot sooner, a week in advance, but also you get, my comic book tips and tricks. I think you get some JeyOdin oldies and, some other stuff as well. So definitely go check it out. You can follow me on... let me move this. You can follow me on social media and, at JeyOdin. Everything's right there. You can go to my Linktree. That also helps as well. So, yeah. But, okay. So today we're going to be reacting to I Learned Dynamic Perspective from the Goats. I am looking forward to this. The thumbnail looks really, really cool. It was Gon, who was running in the tournament section when he was fighting Hisoka. But before I do that, I also want to say this is Life Agent. This is my one shot. You can actually get this for free on my Gumroad channel. So, like I said, just go to the Linktree, JeyOdin. You can download this for free. It's a one shot that I did about a year and a half ago. Very fun, very cool. Hopefully I can do more of this in the future. But yeah. Again, passion projects and all the other stuff. So this entire episode, for everybody that's on YouTube, we're talking about passion projects, why diversity in manga is important, and also what manga and anime influence my art. So if you want to check that out, again, go to my Patreon. You will have fun there. But let us get to it. So we're going to watch this video and react to it. Let's do it. Am I right there? Okay, here it is.
You see, I had that bro thinks he's Kim Jong-gi moment when I tried to jump straight into drawing fisheye freehand. Obviously, I failed miserably. It turns out if you don't have the grid branded into your head like he did, it's just borderline impossible. But after studying how the goats actually use fisheye perspective in their work, I found techniques, tools, and little decision-making tips that might just make our lives a little easier when tackling fisheye ourselves. Let's go. Quick thanks to today's...
Yeah, I mean, that artist was amazing. Like, that dude is great. And when it comes to the fisheye view, I mean, it is difficult to actually, do a lot of images that way. If you, practice, obviously, you can get better at it. And I've seen a lot of different artists on Instagram that have utilized the fisheye view. So, I don't know, hopefully I can get to a point where I can, put that inside of my story a lot more as well. Because, I mean, I really like the look of that. So... All right, anyway.
Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for creatives and entrepreneurs. So, to get to the point where we can even have 10% of the late Kim Jong-gi's powers, I thought I first have to get used to the grid. Again, you can find these curvilinear grid brushes easily online, and that should be enough for you to get started. I just drew cubes in that space that I created, stacking them up like this and try my best to mimic a natural environment. To really understand fisheye, you have to understand two major concepts. The distortion is the strongest at the edges of the lens, not the canvas, the lens. So for example, if the center is here, the distortion will be stronger on the left side than the right side. Does that make sense? The distortion can also make things feel closer or further away from the camera than they actually are. As you can see in these examples, things that are closer seem a lot more close, and things that are further away seem like they're further away compared to the normal lenses. Once I'm feeling good and was able to do these without too much issues, I just turned off the grid and continued stacking cubes until I had something like this. But immediately there was a problem. This is just not how the real world works. We can see in Kim Jong-gi's work that there are a lot of random things being placed here and there, but there's a sort of this order to the chaos there to keep all of it together. It looks natural. So the $1,000,000 question here is, how can I make this look less like the back rooms and more organic? If we take a look at Omao's work here, you'll find that most things in the scene are aligned to the perspective grid, and aligning things to the grid isn't exactly the hardest thing to do in the world. What makes the piece look more natural is the small strategic amounts of items that are misaligned on purpose.
That was actually well, first of all, let me just say, I'm glad I found this, video, because I am not that good at backgrounds. I think I have a decent understanding for the most part. But you can always get better. And I think that excuse me, guys. I think that, watching videos like this and, trying to hear other people's perspectives and, tips and tricks for these types of things can, obviously always help you out. So hopefully, I get a lot from watching this. But that was always one of the things, that always kind of gets me when it comes to drawing backgrounds. I think about all the small little, like, minute details, or all the small little objects that are in the background, and I'm like, okay, would this actually be there? How can I make this look cool? What else can I add after I've added, all of the paper that I can ever add? Like, what else can I have on, on the wall? Should it be, a picture frame? Should it be, a bookshelf with books on it? Should it be, toys, all this other stuff? And like, it's always just something else that is in your head. And one of the best pieces of advice that I can think of when it comes to drawing backgrounds, this is something that I try to do. It's very difficult, but think about your background as another character. If your background is another character of your manga, then it's going to have its own personality. It's going to be a little bit easier to try to craft. So for instance, if your main character's room is, very bland, then, maybe your main character is bland. But that usually is not the case. Maybe your main character likes this type of music. Add posters around his, room that have like that type of music. Maybe they have, CDs or record players, some other place. Maybe this person is like hardcore into manga. He has like an entire bookshelf of, just manga everywhere. Look at my background. Well, I guess you can't see it, but let me do this. Look at my background. I have like some toys right here. I have, I have like obviously some manga. Like I live in Saturday, like I don't live in Saturday AM, but I work for Saturday AM. So like, I have the Saturday AM manga right there. I have a Dragon Ball at the top, like over here. So, I mean, just kind of, you got to like think about the character. That's it. That's just one example. This is my room. Or my office, I guess. So, like, my personality is in this room. Granted, there's a lot of other stuff that I haven't been able to put up. Hopefully I can put up some, pictures very soon. My wife and I just moved into the house, so that's the reason why it's, a little bit more bland than usual. However, you got to think about that type of stuff. And I do think that, if you can create your background as if it's another character inside of your manga or your comic, it does make it a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fun, and probably a little bit easier as well. So again, I'm not that good at drawing backgrounds, but that's definitely one of the best pieces of advice that I can give anybody if you're struggling with backgrounds. So let's keep it watching.
And these things can be living things like the character themselves, or things like wires and clothing. These are the perfect choices to break the grid. You kind of want the grid to just exist in the background to give context to the viewers to understand the perspective and the space the characters are in. Because at this point, I realized that the grid should be used like scaffolding, not a prison that I have to follow religiously. So with that being said, once I was comfortable with the grid, I went on to start practicing rotating stuff inside the space. But before this, there was a very important step to help me clear this exercise relatively easily. Because we don't usually see things like this in real life, this step is really crucial to help import more stuff into my visual library, so that I at least have something to pull out from when I'm drawing later. Speaking of visual library, Demizu Posca's work definitely is a masterclass in fisheye done right. Aside from when someone's going crazy in an anime scene, if you really think about it, the only occasions that fisheye serves any real purpose other than the cool factor are when we're trying to depict the warping effect when something is moving really fast, or when someone is looking through a concave lens like the peephole, for example. This effect was used in the coolest way in this panel of Kagurabachi as well, but this is basically the feeling I get when I'm looking at these pieces from Demizu Posca. The natural lines created by the buildings, the metal bars, and these shelves here directly resembles the grid. She then breaks it up with a character's posing that goes against the grid like this. And to do this requires X and Y rotations. If you don't know what that means, here's a quick clip to show it using Blender. It's easier to understand stuff they're rotating but still sits on the ground, for example these books. It's more intuitive because we see this type of rotation the most in real life thanks to gravity. So you roughly know how it's supposed to look like, but to achieve the rotations you see in these pieces from Posca Sensei that goes against the grid, that would have to be X and Y axis rotations, which is a lot less common to see in real life. That's why I made sure to practice more on those rotations, drawing more cubes that are rotating in the X or Y axis. Also, pro tip, if you're following this exercise, I recommend to make the sides different lengths so that you can visually see the object being rotated. We'll talk about camera angle selections, the character themselves, and how to pose them in a fisheye perspective piece up next.
Another piece of advice that like kind of helps me also with perspective like this is I have this camera method. I actually made a video, it's somewhere on my YouTube, but I also have this inside of the comic book tips and tricks compendium book. It has like a bunch of different PDFs that I put out, and inside of that book it's like the drawing basics, or how to draw by JeyOdin drawing basics, and it talks about the camera view, where essentially you're envisioning looking through a camera at whatever is in front of you, and like it makes a lot more sense when you look at like the examples that I'm drawing. But I kind of want to like revisit this grid. I might do that soon. I think that'd be really fun if I could find time to do it. But I mean, I do think that that'd be really fun. So, all right, let's see, what he's talking about with, poses and stuff.
But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Squarespace.
All right, we don't need to hear about Squarespace. Sorry, dude.
Big thanks to Squarespace for supporting the channel. Now, after all the exercises I have done, I finally got comfortable with rotating cubes in the fisheye space, but that's still very far from what these artists are actually doing. Some of these might look like they have a lot to do with the posing rather than the actual fisheye, but they're actually quite inseparable with each other. Let me explain. If you have been paying attention earlier, you would remember that each of the body parts can be simplified to cubes to better understand their actual alignment in space like this, but there's actually a step in between this that I didn't mention. The entire character can be simplified to a single box, and this is actually the most important thing to understand, because in order to draw the characters moving in motion like this, aside from basic perspectives and understanding space, a huge part of it is shot selection and posing to the camera. It's totally cool to place cameras in conventional spots like here, or here for example, but I want to show this really cool artist that draws animation inspired scenes. These are actually insane. He places the cameras in the weirdest spots ever, and they just work. For example, in this one, the camera is placed here, right in front of where the swing of the kick is happening. But there is a massive tilt to the horizon as well, which contributed to the dynamics of the shot. Or this one.
Camera method. I knew it was too good for me to have created it. Like I came across it naturally just by doing drawing a bunch. I knew I wasn't the only one that thought about this. I knew I was not. There's no way, and it's been confirmed. The camera method is amazing. Check it out.
Which is more of a conventional spot for camera placement, but the leading lines of the chains to the character really enhances how the overall shot looks. And again, slight tilt to the horizon here just to keep things a little more off balance. Finally, this one where it almost looks like the camera is following Gon in high speed while he is moving, giving this crazy distorted shot here. I don't really know how exactly Itokazu Taiga comes up with these shots and his exact thought process, but if I were to do it my own way, I would be using 3D. This tool, for example, link in the description, was very helpful for thinking about the characters in space. Using this alongside a grid, I can tilt and rotate the box in space while having the background grid in a completely different setup. This helps us to visualize the rotated perspective of the character against the background. I guess I should have mentioned this earlier, but when you rotate something in a scene, that object will now have its own grid. Does that make sense? it'll have its own set of vanishing points. Another thing worth mentioning is there are a ton of foreshortening in any of these shots, and a really good way to understand this is to draw these circles for cylindrical shapes, like limbs for example. Itokazu Taiga does these in his preliminary sketches to really understand how the form will foreshorten accurately. The pose also often breaks the grid of the space, like what we discussed in the Demizu Posca section. This creates a lot of contrast and makes the characters stand out against the somewhat orderly background. If you want the character to blend in with the environment more instead, then posing them with the grid will help you achieve that, and this is exactly what Kim Jung-gi does in his drawings. A lot of the characters are often sitting or standing around, which aligns with the perspective grid. That's why it's easier for him to add in so many characters at once. It's harder to figure out the pose once the characters start moving around. This makes the characters feel like they belong in that same space and actually grounded in a reality, even though it might mean that it will take away some action. So it all depends on how you want the scene to look and feel at the end. But of course, all of this won't work if you don't understand the actual anatomy forms you're trying to draw in perspective. I have a video just on that, all about anatomy, that you should definitely.
First off, Rice Brush, definitely go check him out if you guys are interested. That's actually one of the first videos I ever saw of his. Pretty cool. I definitely do want to try, utilizing the grid in one of my new pictures. I would love to do a hammer image sooner rather than later. I think that'd be great. We'll see exactly how soon. Again, I have a lot of stuff that is currently on my plate. This is another reason why I'm like making these videos right now, because I have some free time. So I'm trying to get out a lot of these so that way I can put them on my Patreon, schedule them out, and all this other stuff. So if you guys want to support me there, and just support me in general, so that way I can try to keep on doing more of these videos, as well as also get to a point where I can do more of the hammer grids and all this other stuff, then please go to the link in the description, become a patron. If you already are a patron and you are doing $5 right now, do 15, because not only do you get more like my comic book tips and tricks, but you also get to watch these videos a week earlier. So pretty cool. If you've made it this far into the video, then thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I think you'll like probably some of these videos right here. Maybe subscribe and, click that notification bell so that way you can be notified the next time I put out another video. And if you want to watch the entire full episode, then go to my Patreon and pledge as little as $5. Everything is in the description box below. Deuces.